listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again today. Just like any other day, we have another show lined up for y'all. We are going to talk to a amazing guest today, a Christian author and ceramic artist. Her name is Morgan McCarver, and she has a book that's coming out January 9th. It is entitled God the Artist. And you can get this right now and pre-order. Well, you can pre-order. You got to wait till January, but you can pre-order right now and you can just have a fun time with that. But before we get any further in this interview, I want to welcome you, Morgan, to the show and say, how are you doing today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing good and I'm looking forward to this.
Well, appreciate you taking time to talk to us today. Tell us a little bit about your story, because you obviously wrote this book with a story in mind, and you've been through some things, some surgery, some very, I would say, serious surgeries that really changed, your life. Because I read in your bio that some things you wanted to do and you had to put it off, while you're recovering. So kind of tell us a little bit about what kind of prompted you to write this book.
Yeah, thanks for leading that in. You're right. I originally was a dancer. That was my passion growing up. I was always dancing, taking lessons, competing, and everything was really put on hold when I had scoliosis spinal fusion surgery. And I had that at about age 14. So I was in 8th grade at the time. I had been diagnosed about 3 years prior, and I had been wearing back bracing and seeing different doctors, getting different opinions. But when those 3 years were up, they had decided, for the most part, I had stopped growing, but my spinal curve wasn't getting any better. And in fact, it was getting worse. It wasn't holding. And so those who aren't familiar with scoliosis, basically my spine was growing like an S curve instead of just going straight up. And so I actually had 3 curves in my back. So in my neck, and then in my middle back, and in my lower back. And those curves were getting worse by degrees, and they were also rotating. And so those, if I had stayed without the surgery, my organs would have been affected. I wouldn't have had a very healthy adult life. And so at the time, I ended up having the scoliosis spinal fusion surgery, which meant I have 2 titanium rods that are about 18 inches long. And I have about 18 screws in my back. And that is keeping my spine straight. It straightened my spine. It, in a sense, corrected my scoliosis, but it's something that I will just live with permanently. So if you look at me, you'd probably never know. I just have amazing posture, but it really put my dance passion on hold because I couldn't really dance for that year after the surgery. It was a pretty intense recovery process. So I couldn't bend or twist or pick up anything over 6 pounds or do anything that normal teenagers love to do. I couldn't dance like I wanted to. Even carrying my books, my textbooks around school, I couldn't wear a backpack. And so I'd have to have a fellow student carry my textbooks for me or open the heavy school doors for me. And that was, in a way, it was very traumatizing. The surgery itself was a traumatic experience, but then the recovery was a whole new level of a mental experience that I wasn't prepared for, just because everything was so different and there was so many limitations that I had to work around or just deal with. Everything from carrying those textbooks, and I was entering high school. I wanted to feel like a normal teenager, and I had been so active before, and everything felt like it had been taken away from me at that point. I couldn't use my creative outlet of dance. I couldn't express myself in that way. That was my form of exercise. I couldn't exercise in that way. And I was really looking for a new creative outlet. And my mom signed me up for a kids' summer camp. It was a summer art camp, like a pottery class. And I really fell in love with the clay, just how malleable it was and how much flexibility I could get out of the clay. It was finding that freedom in the clay that I no longer had in my physical body. And it was just such an amazing experience to be so hands-on with the clay, because you are directly touching it with your hands. There's no paintbrush or tools or something separating you from the clay. It is so hands-on that tactile experience just really drove me to it. And so I kept taking classes. My high school didn't really offer them. So I took them through another form, like a cultural center in the area. So it was after school, after the workday for most people. And I was in class with a bunch of retirees who would use this as a hobby, and they'd come into class and drink their wine and throw their pottery. And high schooler Morgan is in there just trying to figure things out. But it was so much fun, and it was such a community that I didn't expect. And they were so encouraging, just taking me under their wings, showing me everything they learned, helping me and guiding me along the way. It was really a great experience, to the point that I actually decided to go to college for ceramics. And I have my bachelor's of arts with a concentration in ceramics and a double minor in art history and business from Anderson University, which is in South Carolina. It's the South Carolina School of the Arts. And it's actually one of the few places that you can still get a specific ceramics degree. And it really opened my eyes to different versions of ceramics. That's kind of how I got into slip casting, which uses a lot of plaster molds. And that's what I do prevalently in my work today. But it also helped me really connect my faith to my art. It is a Christian university, and my professors were really good about always pointing things back to God and pointing things back to God made us this way, and this is how we can honor him. And likewise, the potter made tools in a certain way so that the clay is more efficient. And things like that made me really want to read like a devotional book about that. And there wasn't really anything I could find that was what I was looking for at the time. And upon graduation in 2019, I felt the Holy Spirit just telling me that that could be something I could start writing and working on. So through that whole process, I had a really rough manuscript. I tried to get it published in 2019. I was told I could self-publish, but I'd need to pay a lot of money and pretty much have an editor rewrite my whole manuscript. And at the time, I was fresh out of college. I didn't have the money to just throw at some project that I didn't know what was going to happen with. So I prayed for guidance. The Holy Spirit told me just to put that on hold, wait until I have more experience. And I thought that meant decades down the line. But it really didn't. It actually was about 3 years. And in that time, I worked for a ceramic supply company. I worked as customer service, kind of help desk type things. I worked ceramics retail for them as well. I taught private ceramics lessons to adults and children. I taught different art lessons as well. I taught summer camps. I ended up moving states. I'm now in North Carolina, and I worked for a potter for about a year and a half, seeing what running her business was like, how a studio potter really works, what the day-to-day kind of atmosphere is like, computer work, things like that, doing shows. And then this past January, the Lord really reached out and said that it was time to revisit that manuscript. And so in the mountains, I'm in Asheville. So in the mountains in the cold January, I, through what I thought was a terrible experience of not really having a lot of work, it actually was a lot of free time that I was able to just completely designate for writing God the Artist. And I pretty much wrote it in about 2.5 weeks. I started reaching out to publishers then, the whole time praying, Lord, you saw what happened with the first manuscript. If anything's going to happen with this, and if I truly believe that you told me to pick this up again, which I do, then it's going to be completely your will, completely your design. And I completely relinquish all power I have over this manuscript, because I know nothing about publishing. And so if anything's going to happen, it's going to be because of you. And one publisher reached out. They told me that my manuscript was too short and I needed to add about a third more word count. And so I worked on that for another week and a half. I basically doubled the word count, sent it back to them for review, and I got the yes to my application in April. And as they say, the rest is history. Morgan James Publishing in New York has just been an amazing publishing company to work with, so helpful. And I know it's all completely because of God. Everything that's happened is because of him and what he's allowing to happen for me to share this story, because I wasn't comfortable sharing my story for the first 10 years after my surgery. And now 12 plus years later, I am realizing that my story was given to me by God so that I can honor him through that. And not only that, but he has allowed me to share my story as well through God the Artist, the book, and through recording podcasts like these. Now I'm able to share this story, and I feel like I've got so much time to catch up on because I've been holding back for so long. I just didn't want to talk about it. I was so frustrated that things happened. But now looking back so many years later, over a decade later, I'm able to see what a blessing that truly was and how my scoliosis surgery really led me to pottery, and the Lord led me on my career path and where I've ended up living, my friend group, everything, because of that experience.
We're talking to our guest today, Morgan McCarver. You can get her book, Preorder. Get more information on that by going to her website. Is morganmccarver.com/new-book. You can find all information where it comes out January 9th of next year. Let's go back a little bit when you had to get the surgery. You mentioned school. So for the audience, you mentioned you were going to high school, right? So
I was
this surgery just before freshman year in high school?
It was actually January 17th of my 8th grade year. So the second semester of 8th grade, about to finish middle school and then head into freshman year of high school.
What was it like? Because, I mean, I'm sure people get an idea, but coming from you, I mean, what was it like trying to go to school? You mentioned heavy doors. Other people had to help you with books and all that. What was that process for you? Because, I mean, someone that age, we already had to have those heavy book bags, so that had to been quite of an adjustment for you.
It was, and my school was really good about helping me adjust. Some teachers allowed me to keep textbooks in their rooms that I could just pull out, and then I'd have another copy at home so I could do my homework. But every case was a little bit different with different teachers and classmates as well. You know, they were accommodating, but of course, someone disappears for about a month and a half to 2 months. I was homeschooling during that time, doing my work from home and submitting it to the teachers. And so I had really been gone. I was out of school, out of the friend group, out of those experiences, those inside jokes, and coming back into that, physically changed, and people were almost afraid to touch me, afraid to be around me, because it was such an experience and so traumatic. I couldn't just run up and give someone a hug and hang out like we used to. And there were a lot of things. I had to carry a pillow around with me to lean against in the classroom. And that, just a high school girl anyway struggles with body image. And so, of course, that was difficult for me. And I don't think at the time I really realized how mentally affected I really was in that way. I just knew I didn't really want to go to school. I didn't really want people to see me. People would make comments, not realizing, especially I remember there was a time at Applebee's, like a restaurant, and I was going in to eat with my family. It was after church one Sunday, and I was bringing my pillow in, of course. And, the waiter, I don't know if he was just trying to be funny or if he was uncomfortable, but he looked at the pillow and said, "Oh, someone's going to take a nap," like making a joke. And that's not mean, but it hurt because I didn't have a choice. I had to take that pillow with me. But just little things like that, I noticed looking back at it, those things really did make me more introverted and more shy. And I wasn't really the one to speak up anymore. I kind of stopped raising my hand for a while. And it really has taken quite a few years for me to really come back into my own and accept myself in that way and find my confidence and self-esteem again.
When you started the book and you were in the stages of prepping it for publishing and getting it ready for the release for next year, January 9th, I mean, what was your family's reaction and friends' reaction finding out that you are, sharing your story with the world?
That's a great question. My mom wrote for a local newspaper for over 10 years. And so I actually got her to proofread the manuscript before I sent it off. And so getting her feedback, it was really amazing to have that connection. And she knew what I went through. But it was also a little bit nerve-wracking because I didn't talk about my surgery. I don't talk about my surgery in the book in a completely positive way. I admit that it was hard for me, and I admit that I was frustrated that my parents made me have that surgery, because that's what it was in my eyes. I was too young to make that decision, and it's a good thing they didn't let me, because I probably would have said no. But the surgery only would have gotten harder the longer we would have waited. And I admit now, I completely agree that was the right decision. I needed to have that surgery to live a normal life. But in the moment, when all I'm seeing is my whole world derailing, I was mad at my family for making me experience that. And so when I gave it to my parents, I was a little bit worried about what they would think, but they were very understanding. And it is interesting to think about. I think the Lord kind of blocked my thoughts while I was writing God the Artist. I wasn't really thinking about who was going to read it. But after I got the acceptance and after publication has kind of been underway, those thoughts kind of come in like, oh, this person, this person might read it, or this is going into the public, like anyone could read it. And the story that I've kept so private for 10 plus years is going to be very public very soon. And those are things that I've had to wrestle with and really pray about. But again, it's recognizing, yes, this is my story, but for me to keep it under a bushel, so to speak, as the song says, I'm not sharing that how God worked in my life. I'm not, otherwise my story is just, I discovered pottery in high school and that's what I do now. That is not my testimony. And so for me to not share that testimony, is not honoring God. So yes, God gave me this experience, but he gave me this experience to glorify him. And that has taken me, again, years to recognize and years to learn. But now that that's what I see, it makes the story easier to tell. It is still, difficult, some aspects to talk about, but just recognizing that I could help somebody else with my story. And that's the beauty of podcasts too. Anyone can listen, and podcasts are so accessible and so easy and quick to listen to. It's a great way to spread God's love and to spread my testimony and to really say, this is such a crazy story. No one goes from a major traumatic back surgery to pottery. That's just not a normal jump. And so that can only be from God. That's just so much more evidence of God in my life and God's existence and God's faithfulness and his grace towards me that he would let me hide my story for 10 years. It's just so amazing now to really see how my relationship with God has grown through all of this.
Once again, talking to Morgan McCarver. You can go to her website, morganmccarver.com. Get her new book that is coming out January 9th of next year. You can also pre-order. It's available on Barnes & Nobles and anywhere you can get a book. You can pre-order right now. The book is entitled God the Artist, Revealing God's Creative Side Through Pottery. When you look at the hand you were dealt, one can take this and easily, rightfully so, become bitter, become annoyed, through the whole why me situation. Why did you decide to look beyond that and push yourself the way you have when you could have just been, negative?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it's a daily battle. Like, to hear what I've been saying, you could think that I don't struggle with body image anymore. That's not true. It's a daily battle of, recognizing that I'm made for more. I'm worth more than just my appearance, things like that. And it was hard to get back into things. To just be negative, though, is very exhausting. And so at some point, you've got to come out of it, and recognizing what I've found because of my experience being the pottery is so much more amazing. Yes, I love dance, and I loved my friends that I had through my dance classes, and that was a great relationship, and we still keep up with each other on Facebook. And today I still do Zumba. I am active in similar ways. I'll never be as flexible as I was before my surgery, and I've had to come to terms with that, and that is hard. But then also for me to recognize that I might never have had the joy of discovering ceramics and going to school for ceramics. I could be on a completely different career path. Ceramics is all of my time for the most part. That's what I do on the weekends and the evenings. I do festivals. I have an online shop. So there's so many things that I do with ceramics. For me to not have that outlet, I just can't even imagine what my life would be like. And in a very small way, that's how I'm able to kind of glimpse the briefest understanding of heaven. I love this life, and I love being on earth, and I love my friends and family. And this is an amazing experience, but it's nothing compared to what heaven is going to be. And so me seeing that and seeing, my life before my surgery, I thought it was amazing. I was having so much fun. And those were good things. Dancing is a great thing, but it is nothing compared to the joy and the success that I have found through pottery. That helps me be able to see my life on earth is a great thing, and praising God is an amazing thing. But getting to heaven and being in a perfect world where there is no pain, there is no, incorrect spinal curve or anything like that. There's only beauty and perfection and God and his glory and praising him. It's just something I look forward to. And that kind of helps me parallel those two things.
Being able to get through the pain of your surgery and going through what you had to go through in recovery and pushing this new book, what would you say to anybody out there who feel like, pain is too much?
That's a great question too. And I would say some days it feels like that. There's still things I can tweak my back in the studio or do something where I'll have to, take pain meds or wear like a wrap or something. And those days are not fun. So anyone who's struggling with a type of pain or chronic pain like that, I get you. I understand it is hard. But to recognize that God is using that for his glory, and God will, if you're completely relying on him and seeking after his will, that you are in his will and he will use that story for his glory. And it'll be amazing for you too. I think that sometimes we forget that glorifying God, can also be good for us. It doesn't mean that, oh, well, I'm suffering and that's glorifying God. We can be joyful and enjoy our lives and also be glorifying God, but it doesn't always happen in the moment. So like I've been saying, in the moment, and for 10 years after the moment, after that surgery, I did not understand. I had found pottery. I had been doing pottery for 10 years, and I still was not able to see the goodness that God had given me. I wasn't able to see this is why I had the surgery. I was just trying to make it, trying not to talk about it and trying to forget it. But coming out of that and looking back, I'm able to see that now. And so I would encourage you, if you're in that moment, and you're feeling desperation or whatever it might be, hopelessness, frustration at what you've lost, I get that. And it might not be in the moment. And I know that's not what we want to hear in today's culture of instant gratification. But that's what God is asking of us in that moment, is just faithfulness and trusting in him, that he will make something beautiful out of our ashes. He will restore us. And it might not be restoration to what we once were. I will never be as flexible as I was. I will never be able to bend my back again or twist my back again. I'll never be able to be on a trampoline or play contact sports, or there's things that I've been told by doctors I will never do. But that's not where I can focus. I must focus on the abilities that God has given me and the beauty that he has given me through this. And remembering that I wouldn't have found my love of pottery if it wasn't for my scoliosis experience.
Once again, talk to Morgan McCarver, and like it says in your book, in the overview, it talks about you are helping individuals with this book to also understand a deeper connection to God and his creativity that he has for that individual.
Yes. So God the Artist walks alongside you. So I say you don't have to be a potter to read the book, and you don't have to be a Christian. I kind of dive deeper into that as we go through. And so my challenge to everyone is to discover your own creativity as you're reading through God the Artist. And that's what I open with. We're all creative, and people have just told me to my face, I'm not creative. I could never be creative. And I say that's just so not true. And there's so much untapped creativity inside of you that you don't even know about, because God is creative and we're made in God's image. And not only that, but that's the first verb ever used in Genesis. In the beginning, God created. So right when you open the Bible, the first verb we're talking about is creation and creating, and God's ability to create, and his imagination and his artistry, and all of these beautiful and wonderful things of making something that hasn't been made yet and creating something out of nothing. So of course we have to be creative. And if you believe that the Bible is true, then you have to believe that you're created in God's image, which by default makes you creative. And I say that means it might not look like you think. You might not be the best, but it doesn't say that God made us the best. God made us creative. And so I'm not the best potter in the world. I just know that. I'm not the most famous potter. I'm not the most skilled, but that doesn't disqualify me from being a potter. And that doesn't disavow me or devalue my work. My pottery is still my creation, and it's still something that I enjoy to do. And it brings me joy. And my joy through finding my creativity is honoring God, because joy comes from God. So it can't be wrong in that way. So I can bring honor to God by finding my passion and finding what brings me joy.
You can get this book. It's coming out next year, January 9th. You can get it pre-order right now on Barnes & Noble or anywhere you like to shop for the book. We're talking to our guest, Morgan McCarver. You can go to her website, morganmccarver.com. Once again, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. This has been great.